very much, Deputy President. I rise to take note of the Minister's explanation. And the Minister's explanation reveals two major problems this nation has. One, it has a government which is engaging in maladministration when it comes to its housing programs. And two, we have a government which is committed deeply to secrecy. And this explanation is more evidence that the government will not provide the basic information that the Senate has requested through the orders of production in relation to the massive expenditure of taxpayer funds. But we should not be surprised, because this government, according to the Centre for Public Integrity, has the worst record on transparency and secrecy since the Keating government, by virtue of measuring their compliance with orders of the Senate, by virtue of measuring their compliance with freedom of information. And now we see, this week, the government wants to gut the freedom of information laws to ensure that Australians cannot get basic information about the functioning of the government that they pay for. Malcolm Fraser was very clear when he introduced these laws that the government performs better if Australians are informed about the activities of the government. Basic transparency and accountability is not much to ask for when you are committing $10 billion of taxpayer funds, which over the last 2 years of its operation has only built a few houses. And so these orders for production of documents, which go back to February this year, Deputy President, are about providing the information about the expenditure of taxpayer funds through round one of the Housing Australia Future Fund. Back in February, we requested the information. In July, we received a slew of documents, 2,000 pages, many of which look like that. They are blacked out. There are more blacked out pages than there are pages with actual information. And the germane information to the taxpayer is who's getting the money, how much money are they receiving. And I take the Minister's explanation where he says two principal points. He says, well, we can't tell you where the houses are, and the problem with that is that the people who signed up to get access to public funds already said that they were okay in their contracts with the government disclosing the location. And you know why? Because every time you see Minister O'Neill talk about housing, she's on one of these sites. So the idea that this has to be kept secret is ridiculous. It is offensive. Do you think that we are all stupid? The people who have signed— I take the interjection, maybe we are, because the people who have signed these contracts to get taxpayer funds for public housing or social and affordable housing have already said that they're okay with the locations being known. So this is not about protecting people, because you'll see ministers tripping over television cords pretty soon on all these sites. Secondly, in terms of the minister's justification that the government won't say how much money have gone to these providers, I mean, that is unbelievable to me. That the government's going to dish out taxpayer funds to private organisations and it won't say how much money they're getting in availability payments. It won't say. Well, I'm afraid that's not how our system works. If the government is spending taxpayer funds, it needs to say how much money is going to these organisations. I'm afraid that we don't live in a country where these things are allowed to be secret. Everyone will need to find out. And so I say again that the country has two massive problems here in this space. There is maladministration in the program's delivery. It's been going for 2 years. It's only built a handful of houses. Clearly the tender processes have been a disaster. And secondly, the secrecy is intolerable. It is intolerable. But maybe this is all part of the plan. When you're proposing to never respond properly to the Senate's orders and every FOI is covered up in black ink, and now you're proposing to destroy the FOI Act, maybe that's all okay. But it's not good enough for the Australian people. They expect the government to be honest and transparent, and we will never let up. And I call on the crossbench to continue to hold the government to account. They think that they have unfettered power, but that is totally unreasonable in a democracy like this, which has this Senate.